I find the average layman represented by his wife. I was going through on the Frisco through Enid, Oklahoma a few years ago, and I bought a copy of the Enid, Oklahoma News from a newsboy at the train, and I was interested in an advertisement on the back page. It had a fellow's picture and his telephone number, and it said, "Auctioneering is my business. Price is reasonable. If I'm out of town, make dates with my wife." And I cut the thing out and put it in my scrapbook here. I thought maybe I might be back through that part of the country. You never know. But isn't it a fact, grandmother on a winter's day, why she milked the cows and fed them hay and slopped the hog and saddled the mule and got the children off to school and did some washing and mopped the floors and washed the windows and did some chores and cooked a dish of home dried fruit and pressed her husband's Sunday suit and swept the parlor and made the bed and baked a dozen loaves of bread and then split some firewood and then dragged in enough to fill the kitchen bin. And she cleaned the lamps and put in oil and stewed some apples she thought might spoil and churned the butter and baked a cake and then exclaimed, "For goodness sake, the calves had got out of the pen," and went out and chased them in again. She gathered the eggs and locked the stable and back to the house and set the table, cooked a supper that was delicious, and afterwards washed up all the dishes and fed the cat and sprinkled the clothes and mended a basket full of hose and then opened the organ and sat down to play. Well, now this is the end of a perfect day. A woman's world. Poetry, of course, is my way of making the world palatable. I write a little stuff once in a while, and I have a lot of fun with it. I write things I call odes, and I like to tell my audiences that when I get away from New Mexico, they usually refer to me as New Mexico's worst odor. I know three things that must always be: to keep a nation strong and free, and one is a hearthstone bright and clear with busy, happy loved ones near, and one is a ready heart and hand to love and serve and keep the land, and one is a worn and beaten way to where the people go to pray. And so long as these are kept alive, why, nation and people will survive, and God keep them always everywhere: the hearth, the flag, and the place of prayer. Big things, little things. I think that things ought to be judged not so much about what they are as they are to what they may become. I suppose all of us kind of consider ourselves the pivot around which the rest of the world revolves. We never see ourselves in relation to anybody else or anything else. We only see other things in their relation to us. We never ask ourselves, do I love my friends enough? But we're always continually asking myself if my friends love me enough. I was down at a teachers' convention the other day and happened to be going down the hall in the hotel, and there was a transom open over a door, and I heard some girl say, "You know something? I went right by so-and-so down in the lobby a while ago, and she didn't speak to me." Well, of course, what she always ought to have said was that I passed right by her and didn't speak to her, but that wasn't what she said. She said she didn't speak to me. Funny thing, isn't it? A girl will close her eyes when she's being kissed, but brother, I'm telling you, she don't close her eyes when some other girl's being kissed and she's around with you. And I think maybe today that one of the reasons why so many people refuse to face facts is that in order to do so, they'd have to turn their backs on their own prejudices. I'll never forget some years ago when I was out on a speaking tour, and I was kind of feeling sorry for myself. I imagine I felt a good deal like I did Tuesday when I left Amarillo in the snowstorm to try to get up to Los Animas to the meeting of the livestock feeders there. And traveling some 100 and some odd miles in snow and didn't know when I was going to run out of it. And I thought, what a silly thing it is. What in the world does a man do this sort of thing for? I felt a good deal like that one time when I was going into Alamogordo, New Mexico, and I was talk to the Rotary Club at noon. And I was feeling pretty sorry for myself and pretty low, and I went ahead, though, and filled the assignment, and afterwards, a few people were kind enough to come up and say something nice about the talk. But I was particularly impressed by the tone of the voice of one particular individual who said something nice, and I turned to shake his hand, and I discovered to my amazement that he didn't have any hands. And so then I looked up into his eyes, and I discovered that he didn't have any eyes. But after I'd gone back to the hotel after that meeting, it was just along about this time in the afternoon when the phone rang, and it was this man. And he said to me, "I understand you have your car." I said, "I do." He said, "How would you like to take a ride down through El Rico Canyon?" Well, the prospect of seeing a canyon with a man that didn't have any hands or any eyes kind of intrigued me, and I said I'd be delighted. So I drove around and picked him up, and we went out, and I'll bet you that no man ever saw El Rico Canyon like I saw it that afternoon. He kept saying, "Do you see that crag there? See how the cedars jut out from this point? Look how those shadows fall away as the light changes. And here are the Palisades as we rounded this corner." And finally I said to him, "Such so many wonderful word pictures." And I said to him, "How long since you've seen these things?" And he said, "Well, D.D., it's been almost 35 years. But every time I'm downcast and downhearted and feeling low in spirits, and I always come out here, you have no idea what these canyons and these hills mean to me." He said, "You sounded a little bit tired today, and I thought maybe you'd like to come out here." So I said, "Well, I was feeling kind of sorry for myself, but I don't feel it that way anymore. Do you know, suppose that people had to pay to see the sunset's crimson play or the magic stars of the Milky Way. Suppose that it was 50 cents a night to see the great moon saffron light or see a bird in its graceful flight. And how much would an autumn landscape cost, or a wintry window etched with frost, or a rainbow's glory so quickly lost? And how much do you reckon it'd be worth to smell the fresh, brown, fragrant earth in spring? And how about the miracle of birth and love and play and the laugh of a child at the close of day? Suppose God charged us for all these, I say, and suppose we paid for a glimpse of the hills and the mating song of the whippoorwills and the song of rippling green mountain rills and curving green breakers in the sea and grace and beauty and majesty and all the things God gives us free. And oh, what poor return for these we give at night on bended knees, forgiving, thanksgiving, and muttering please, and ignoring the moonlight across the floor or the voice of a friend at the open door. We just beg the Master for more and more. Some kid said to a friend of his on the playground the other day, he said, "You say your prayers last night?" He said, "Nope." Well, he said, "Don't you say your prayers every night?" He said, "Nope." Well, he said, "Why don't you?" Well, he said, "There's some nights I don't want nothing." You know, the psychologist William Marston took a survey the other day among 3,000 persons. He asked this question. He said, "What have you to live for?" And he was amazed to find that 94% of us were simply enduring the present while they waited for the future, waited for something to happen, waiting for children to grow up and leave home, waiting for the next year, waiting for another trip, waiting for someone to die, waiting for tomorrow, waiting and apathetic. Now, this is the a mid-century year of the so-called 20th century. And a lot of organizations in annual meetings such as this are planning some special observance through the year or taking time out to review the past, maybe patting each other on the back a little bit and doing a little bit of bragging. And those things are all fine. The back patting and the bragging and the celebrating are all well-deserved. But never in history have there been a like period when the lives of so many people have been affected so often and so much by so many things. And we people here in America have had ringside seats to all of them. We fought and won 2 wars, although as yet we have failed to win the peace from either. We've seen the maps of the world redrawn, and we have seen it shrink to postage stamp size. Because since 1900 we have conquered time and space. Why, in 1900, people wouldn't have dreamed of such a thing as trying to go from Clayton to Lamar and return the same day. We'd have packed the trunk, and we'd have got all our affairs straightened up, and we'd have made arrangements to have been gone for a month or something of the kind. And today I leave the office at 10 o'clock and arrive at Lamar at 12:15, 144 miles. People then were born and grew up and raised families and died without ever having traveled as much as 100 miles from their birthplace. The day you can leave home in the morning and you can have dinner on either coast or in Mexico City. And things considered impossible become commonplace. Become commonplace to transact business anywhere in the world in a few minutes through a little instrument on the corner of your desk or on the wall of your home. You hear music or a ball game being played almost anywhere. And we want a light in our country home. Thanks to our EA, we reach over and we flip a little switch on the wall. We want it warmer, why we adjust another little gadget. And we want it colder, we adjust another one. If you really want to know what's happened in the last 53 years, start out in the morning when you get out of bed. And all during that day, ask yourself this question with every move you make: how would I have done this 53 years ago? Or would it have even been possible to do the things that I am doing 53 years ago? Well, we walk the same and we talk the same and we see and we hear and we smell and taste and feel. We know love and hate and joy and sorrow. These bodily things and these actions, the senses, or emotions are about the only thing that they're the same today as they were in 1900. Countless intimate physical things surrounding our lives have been created and improved. But there are little less obvious things going on, too. I don't have to tell you about things today. You're a high type of intelligent, mature people. Your annual meeting can be a regenerating station. And then you could go back to your businesses or to your farms and your homes, and you can do a lot of steering, and you could do a lot of directing to the right or to the left and forward or backward. Despite all the progress we've made in the last 53 years, my mind keeps running today back in another direction. In this noontime of the century, we're still only halfway through the day, and there's always tomorrow. And today or at lunch or at some other time, we're prone to say, well, I wound up such and such a deal this morning. Or I'm going to look into this thing or that thing right after lunch. Well, there are a few things we better take care of, or right after lunch may not be time enough. The trouble of us today is that most of us are so busy paying attention to the things that are urgent that we don't have time to take into consideration or pay any attention to the things that are important. We're so busy putting out fires, so to speak, that we find it difficult to do the planning that would prevent those fires from occurring in the first place. The prominent educator has expressed that Americans generally spend so much time on things that are urgent, as I say, that we have no time to left for the things that are important. And I'm becoming more and more concerned about our apathetic attitude toward the little things which make up our daily lives. And that's why I chose this particular topic and the subject for this talk. Size makes great impressions upon us. Big homes, big buildings, big cars, big ships are all in special importance because of their size. And men like to be busy on big deals, something that's always arouses our interest, just as a child will look eagerly toward a big box that's under the Christmas tree rather than a small one. We're so busy paying attention to the so-called big things that we overlook the minor details. And that's where we're foolish, because it's the small things in life which are most important to us. The average American today is a small man. He lives in a small house. He holds a small job. And the real success and happiness of his life depends upon small matters. We should learn not to be so impressed so much by big things as to recognize that small things have a more important place in our lives. I came in not so very long ago into the harbor at New York, and I saw that great Statue of Liberty holding up the torch there as we moved in. It was an impressive sight. But not so very long ago, looking out of my hotel window on the top floor of a big hotel and out over a great, vast American city, on a very clear night, and seeing the thousands and the millions of lights And then driving out through the country as we have it now, and seeing the yard lights that there are out by the barn and by the chicken house and almost every farm in America. And I thought, after all, there is the Statue of Liberty. Every one of us has a Statue of Liberty, and the Statue of Liberty is the light that shines on our own street corner or in our own yard. Bright century in a no man's land of night, it tells us that all is still well with America, that no alien hand has pulled the switch that blacks out first the light of freedom and then the light of life. Here in our country, in our house, the coming of night's not yet a prelude to the snuffing out of life. Our children are still free to sleep and to wake and to play, and we shall know that they're free, not only by the torch that burns on the Statue of Liberty, but by the undimmed lights of millions of lamps on our own street corners and our own house. Those are big things. Through my reading, and it's been more than fairly extensive, I've been able to convince myself that the substantially unanimous judgment of the body of social and political scientists, the great thinkers of our nation, the faculties of our universities, believe that the democracies will win the wars that are now raging around the world. Not only from the expressions of their belief, but from the reading of history, I have convinced myself that the democracies will win. I think that it may be said of democracy that its spread is in reality the advance of civilization. Despots and tyrants and dictators have never survived. Stop for just a moment and consider with me the history of the world. Sargon of Assyria, the pharaohs of Egypt, Darius and Xerxes and Alexander the Great and the warlords of Rome, they all flourished at time, each in his own respective disgrace, went down in confusion. There was Philip of Spain, he of the Armada. Napoleon, who overran Europe much the same as Stalin is attempting to overrun it. What's the impress left for them, and what trace is there of their dread efforts? Yes, the democracies will always win, because the democracies have always won. But the real crisis in the world today, at least so says Hugh Tyner, president of Pepperdine College, is neither military or economic nor political, but spiritual and psychological and moral. And our problem is how to keep democracy. I want to tell you something. If we're going to keep democracy, then a lot more people are going to have to take a lot more interest in what's going on around us. And we're going to have to do something about our terrible apathy, about the things in which we are supposed to be interested. What is the matter with us when we have trouble getting a quorum at an annual meeting of a great cooperative such as this? What's the matter with us when we have so much selfish interest that we don't feel like that we have time to go and take care of the things that are important to all of us? Late years, for some reason or another, most of us have, for some reason or another, feared belief. It hasn't been the fashion lately to appear credulous or to believe in anything or to have any part in anything. The doctrine has grown that unless you were skeptical, that you weren't mentally awake. Unless you expressed doubt, you weren't using your head. Unless you were finding fault, you weren't socially minded. And so the fashion has grown never to speak well of anything. And this has brought us to emphasize the problems of our society. And one of the great things that we have allowed to creep up against us in America is a revolt against intelligence. So the fashion has begun never to speak well of anything. We've been emphasizing all our problems. Talk to somebody and say, I'll tell you what's wrong with the co-op. I'll tell you what's wrong with our association. I'll tell you what's wrong with the government. I'll tell you what's wrong with her. So marriage became a problem. The home. Some kid just newlywed the other day said to his wife, his wife said to him, rather, she said, you know, if it wasn't for one thing, I'd leave you and go back home to Mother. He said, well, why don't you? What the heck's holding you? She said, well, Mother's leaving Dad and coming to live with us. Religion became a problem, a democracy a problem, our economic system a problem. We have committed ourselves to denial and denial and denial and negation and negation and negation. And throughout the length and breadth of America today, there is almost an unspoken question as to whether or not democracy can survive. And that's the folly of it. That's the way of death. Men and nations live by their faith and their appreciations and their enthusiasms. And somehow or another, we're going to have to rekindle a positive faith in America. We have to become a people who believe in themselves and in their institutions and in their ideals. People who believe that those ideals are worth living for and, if necessary, worth dying for. I was standing on the street corner the other day in San Francisco waiting for the light to change, and some woman said to the traffic cop on the corner, she said, "My, the wind's terrible today, ain't it?" He said, "No, ma'am. Wind ain't no worse today than it's ever been." It ain't the wind, it's the time. Well, the light changed, but I didn't go across the street. I was up, well, boy, here's a philosopher. He said, "That's a fact." He said, "I've been right here on this corner for 40 years, and the wind ain't blowing 1 ounce more today than it's ever been." But he said, it's just conditions. People are nervous and edgy, and it's world conditions that are to blame. I've even heard of long friendships that have suddenly cracked. The wind's bothering you, you better watch out that you don't let people bother you. You know, it's easy to put the blame somewhere else when things go wrong, and after all, we're all in the same boat. We ought to remember that the other fellow is under pressure too and worried about somebody or something. Whatever you do, don't blame the wind. Oh, one time down through the primeval wood, a calf walked home as a good calf should, but he made a trail that bent askew, and a crooked trail as all calves do. And many men wound in and out and dodged and turned and bent about and uttered words of righteous wrath because 'twas such a crooked path. But still they followed. Do not laugh. The first migration of that calf. And a moral lesson this might teach where I ordained or called to preach, for men are prone to go it blind along the calf paths of the mind, and to work away from sun to sun to do what other men have done. Everybody today has got his favorite number one problem. Our Secretary of Agriculture, Brannon, said that soil erosion was the great number one problem of the world, and Benson says that the number one problem is a free market. And it may have been that somebody else says that inflation's the number one problem. Well, I got another one problem of my own. The one problem is the better use of our intellect. Talk about soil erosion. The greatest danger to America today is the problem of mind erosion. The dust storms of daily excitement, of continual triviality, can easily blow away the sensitive topsoil in the spirit. The result will be a narrow and shallow, nerveless credulity. The number one problem. Number two problem, not a big thing, but a little thing in a way, a thing we call brotherhood. Oh, we've been preaching it ever since I was a kid. I've heard about brotherhood, about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Well, we've got right up against it now to where we're going to have to decide whether it's just a word in a book or a ritual, or whether it's something we really believe in and are willing to practice. You know that Los Angeles, County, California is increasing in population at the rate of 11,000 persons per month. That the net increase in population in the United States is 6,000 every 24 hours, a net increase in population. That 3,000 people a day in the United States reach the age of 65, the retirement age. That the population of the earth increases 30 million every year, that every 12 months we add enough new people to create a country nearly as large as England to the world. That against that tremendously increase in population, that we are losing about 8,000 acres of productive topsoil a month. That many areas of the earth, particularly in South America, have been eroded down to bedrock. These facts pose problems and responsibilities for us who are laying the foundations of tomorrow. Yes. 6,000 net increase in population in the United States every 24 hours. And here's another thing you might well take into consideration. Only 1 out of every 7 of them are white. We're going to have to either believe in brotherhood, and we're going to have to work it out, or else we're going to have to prepare for something tragic. I think maybe the oddity of modern life is the number of people we have today who are spending money that they haven't got to buy things that they don't need just so they can keep up with somebody else they don't like the sight of. I never will forget one time I went in a dining car and the steward seated me right across the table for two, right across from my lady. I don't know just how to describe her. She looked like she might have gone into a beauty parlor and come out without being waited on. But we got to talking as fellow travelers do it. It wasn't very long till the steward came through the car again, and followed by a very attractive young lady. I mean, she was really good looking. And I don't suppose 10 seconds took her to pass our table, but yet after she'd passed, this lady across from me said, "Did you see the horrible hat that woman had on?" Well, I don't mind telling you that was back before they lowered the hemline and the neckline, and I kind of admitted to her that I hadn't noticed the hat. That's right, you well admitted I hadn't got that far. But the funny part about it was that this woman went in and she took that girl apart. That the buttons weren't right, the shoes didn't match, the holes, something wrong with everything, and I was amazed. And finally I said to her, I had never seen such a complete example of observation. The complete picture you got of that girl in the 2 or 3 seconds it took her to pass our table. I said, "Tell me, I'd be interested in one further observation. What did you see about her that you liked?" And I was honest about it. I thought she saw so cockeyed much was wrong with her. Surely she could see one thing she liked. But instead of that, she turned red and she called the steward and she paid her check and got up and left the car, and I felt kind of like a heel. But why can't we start into seeing the good in people? To pick out something about someone else that we can say something nice about or something that we'd like. And let's do it before it's too late. Let's learn to live together. Dennis came down out of his office one afternoon at 5 o'clock, and there was a tramp standing on the corner, and this fellow hit him up for the price of a meal. And Dennis said, "No, sir." This time, said, "There's as much unemployment as there is." He said, "I just don't believe that you're hungry." He said, you want to go get a drink?" The fellow said, "No, sir, I don't drink." "Well," he said, "then you want to go over and play the pinball machines or something of that kind?" The fellow said, "No, sir, I don't gamble." "Well," he said, "ain't any reason why you should be hungry." And the fellow said, "Now, wait a minute, mister. I have been sick." Said, "I know I'm dirty and I stink and all that sort of thing." But he said, "It's because I've been sick and I've been down and out." He said, "You can give me the 4 bits for something to eat if you want to, or if you don't want to, that's your business. But don't you accuse me of having all them there bad habits because I ain't got any of them." So the dentist said, "Okay, bud, come and go with me." So he took him home. When he went out, he went in to see his wife. He said, "Honey, I've got a surprise for you. I've got an unexpected guest." He said, "Don't ask me any questions. Just set an extra plate, and I'll tell you all about it after it's over with." Well, he brought this fellow in and set him up at the table, and I'm telling you, the temperature in that dining room dropped about 20 degrees in 10 seconds. But anyhow, they went ahead and fed him, and then they turned him away, and when he come back in from the door, his wife met him, and she said, "What in God's world do you mean by bringing a man like that in and sitting down at our table?" So the fellow told him all the story. She said, "Well, I still don't see why you should bring him in here." He said, "Now, honey, I'll tell you how it is. I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but here lately, you've been complaining when you found some cigarette ashes on the rug now and then. And once or twice when I've stayed out with the boys after lodge, you said you've kind of looked daggers at me and wouldn't even speak to me the next morning sometime. And he said, you've been kind of critical. He said, I just wanted to bring this fellow here. I wanted to set him up to the table for contrast. I just want you to see what a terrible shape a man can get in that ain't got no bad habits." To learn to appreciate people. And finally, one other thing, and the last. The problem of what we're going to do about a spiritual and ethical awakening in the United States. Because of the war, probably, because of black markets and gray markets and things of that kind, we adopted a new shibboleth in our living, the shibboleth of expediency. We replaced honesty with expediency. Not so much whether a thing, what the value of it was, but what the price was. And if it was expedient to do a thing, we'd do it. And along with that came an effort to try to escape from our own responsibilities to our God and our responsibilities to our country. We still do it. We do a good deal of trying to dodge the issues of the day, of trying to explore the ocean from the shore. A couple of kids going out to Korea the other day on the transport, and one of them, they'd stand at the rail, and one of the boys said to the other, he said, "My God, did you ever see so much water in your life?" I said, 3 days now, I ain't seen nothing but water. The other kid said, "Brother, you ain't seen nothing yet. You're just looking at the top." There's not a man or woman in the world today that's not deeply concerned over the future. We're concerned over our personal lives. We're more or less troubled about the outlook for the whole human family. We live in an era of crisis, moving from day to day in dread of atomic destruction, of renewed warfare, soul-defying tension. What must we do? Well, we must realize that the struggle before us